appreciate you hopefully having a welcome distraction to learn a little bit about something other than COVID vaccines right now. I'm sure that's top of mind for everybody, and we certainly thank you for all of your help in getting this pandemic under control. Kelly, I was not able to start the recording, so, I see that you did. Great, thank you. I appreciate that. So we were going to record the session just so that anyone who was not able to attend in person today was able to go ahead and view that at their leisure. So as Kelly kind of alluded to already, we've had a few, actually several, sort of siloed or compartmentalized kind of conversations, and we've thrown a lot at you. We like to use a lot of three-letter acronyms and buzzwords in Omnicell. So I thought maybe today we would just sort of reset or reorient you to kind of inventory management and the big picture there, and how we're trying to help Andy, Tammy, Jim, and others in your organization sort of roadmap and plan for the future, to really kind of think about, here's your current state, but in your ideal future state, what might that look like with regard to inventory management? So again, as Kelly kind of alluded to already, what I really want to accomplish is really three simple things: kind of review CPM, or Central Pharmacy Manager, talk about how the software solution actually works, how your staff would sort of operationalize that in their day-to-day workflows, and then really help you connect the dots to how CPM can help you guys address your inventory management goals. And so at Omnicell, I'm sure you've heard us talk about autonomous pharmacy before in various different discussions or presentations. And to really keep it simple, because I often like to, I say this myself, you got to dumb it down for me. I really just want the nuts and bolts. Don't give me all that fluff and stuff. Simply put, autonomous pharmacy is really just replacing all those outdated, antiquated, time-consuming, manual, and error-prone processes that we've all just become accustomed to in pharmacy, replacing that with automation and technology so that pharmacy can really perform at an elevated practice level. When you think about other industries, even grocery stores, big box stores, heck, Nordstrom shoe department, they've got much more precise inventory control and mechanisms to identify what's on the shelf. Shouldn't pharmacy and healthcare be at least that advanced? We're talking critical drugs that, as you well know, are critical to the health and the well-being of your community. So shouldn't we do a better job keeping tabs on that inventory and having tools to know what we have? And certainly for all of its negatives and headaches, COVID's actually had a little bit of an upside in kind of illuminating that critical importance of real-time inventory visibility and the need for accurate inventory control. So to just kind of help with that road mapping and help you figure out how CPM can get you to that future state, I wanted to kind of revisit some of these goals that, again, Jim and Andy and Tammy were kind enough to share with us. Gosh, Kelly, that was what, last June, I think? So things that were, you know, sort of top of mind at that time, and be sure that we're really capturing and aligning with those things that you're desiring to do as well. So establishing a perpetual inventory management system in all locations throughout the enterprise, not just the flagship hospital, is obviously one of the objectives. Providing knowledge of real-time quantities on hand, those actual utilization rates at, again, all of the facilities, without having to run paper reports or reports out of multiple disparate systems, pool those all together. really trying to maximize that inventory management as well. So either applying technology to areas that doesn't exist today, or expanding the number of line items that are managed by that inventory management solution. That might be refrigerator areas. It might be remote or overstock locations. There's definitely a lot of high dollar inventory and error prone inventory out there that oftentimes goes unmanaged. Typically, we like to think about our fast movers or those 100, 200, 600 line items that we touch all the time, kind of using that 80-20 rule. But there's still an awful lot of inventory out there that we're sort of blind to. So that's really kind of the overall objective. How do we get to near 100% managed inventory? Lots of ways to sort of optimize and become more efficient. I touched on those a minute ago. Paper processes, manual processes, walking shelves, keeping paper want books, things of that nature. How can we automate more of those processes? And obviously, we don't want to lose sight of improving patient safety. That's a big component too. So leveraging the barcode that's on the product. Again, if you think about grocery stores, they've been using barcodes to scan for decades. And while it's great that we're scanning at the bedside, there's a whole bunch of opportunities upstream of that bedside barcode scanning that we could be taking advantage of, so we're not setting up our nursing partners to fail. So I want to just pause here for a second and be sure that I've captured the things that, are top of mind for you all. I'm going to open it up if you guys want to jump in. If there are other things that we haven't captured here that would be desirable in the future state, go ahead and shout those out. Don't be afraid. I'm not going to bite. Okay, well, hearing none, I think that's actually a good sign that we've done a decent job of some discovery here and understanding really what those future state goals are. So I want to dive right into what is CPM, or Central Pharmacy Manager. Again, simply put, it's perpetual inventory management software that manages non-controlled inventory items in the central pharmacy, in satellite pharmacy locations of either individual hospitals or an entire enterprise that can be managed. So we might have all these little VCOMs out here, Chowan and Edgecombe and North, and also the big flagship hospital. So Central Pharmacy Manager can take care of all of that on a single platform. And it's nice because it's not really discriminating against the size of your pharmacy. So whether you're small and you've only got a few open shelves with your inventory on it, or maybe a larger facility that maybe even has satellites, whether it's refrigerators and freezers, remote stock locations, whether it's involves other hardware like carousels, and maybe those are carousels that you already have. CPM can be the power, the software that powers all of those solutions. And one of the biggest advantages of Central Pharmacy Manager is that it runs on Omnicell's Unity platform, or OmniCenter. And again, I mentioned that we like to use a lot of these buzzwords. So I tried to just sort of give you a visual here of what I'm talking about. So the Omnicell Automated Dispensing Cabinet, the Controlled Substance Manager, or the Vault system, the anesthesia workstations, even our supply cabinets, as well as Central Pharmacy Manager, are all operating on a single database, the single Unity or OmniCenter backbone. And so obviously what that means is that there are less or no internal interfaces because it's all data in the same server. there's one single formulary for all of those items, all of your users, your patients, the inventory locations, all of that exists within one single database. So that's less work on your local pharmacy and local IT staffs to manage as well. So with this software, Central Pharmacy Manager, CPM, the vendor orders are received so the items can be stocked in your pharmacy. The items are picked with CPM for your cabinet fills, for any patient-specific fills, even if you're doing any, say, floor stock or requests from other hospital areas or departments. You can have all or just a select subset of items be verified by a pharmacist or privileged tech through CPM. Items are going to get periodically cycle counted and expired through CPM. And it's through the software that you establish those par or reorder levels for the items so that it keeps track of your inventory and can prepare the order for you within your wholesaler ordering portal. And so then it places the order and the cycle starts all over again. So those are really the key features of CPM that, again, I just wanted to kind of drill into further. Sorry, I didn't realize this slide here was animated, so I'm just going to advance it so we have everything all on one page. I'm just sort of giving you kind of what a schematic of a typical hospital information flow might look like. So again, you've got this single Omnicell database here that's physically connected to a CPM workstation. And you're going to have a couple of interfaces. So an interface with Epic that's going to pull in those patient orders, whether they're new orders or they're cart fill requests. And then there's going to be an inbound and an outbound interface here that connects or communicates with Cardinal so that you can receive those invoices in to CPM and you can push out that purchase order of the items that are needed for your inventory. And essentially, as the items come in, they're received, they're put on the shelf or they're stocked, and then through CPM, you dispense out those items into the nursing floors, cabinets, patient-specific doses. You might send them to satellites, and ultimately they all end up at the patient where they're supposed to belong. So again, this is just sort of an individual facility setup, but for an entire system like Vidant, it would work much the same. There's still a single database, this Omnicell, but each facility can be set up to have their own central pharmacy manager. So a subset of inventory that you manage and you keep on your shelf. But it's all, again, tied back to this one central Omnicell. We can even set this up to support, a central distribution center. We're finding a lot of organizations are moving to centralizing their drug distribution. So I'm going to pause here for a second before I move on and make sure that we're kind of all clear on the big picture of what we're trying to accomplish, utilizing software at least to establish perpetual inventory management, approaching 100% of those items being visible across your entire enterprise. Is everybody on board so far, or do we need to address any questions? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to keep moving until you all stop me. I'm going to, again, just kind of work through a little bit, one layer at a time. So first, I'm going to give you a high-level sort of overview of some of these functions, and then we'll drill down to them on a little bit deeper level. So once you log into the software, you're going to see this dispensing tab and the picking queue. That's sort of the landing spot for all users because that's mostly what you're going to be doing in here. And within the picking queue is where those automated orders are going to fall. whether those are cabinet restocks or those are patient first doses or cart fills, anything that's automated and coming across an interface is going to land here. You would also have the ability to do a demand pick or a manual pick if needed for either a patient, a non-cabinet area, or any particular cabinet within your system. And either of those picking functions are going to decrement the inventory out of your system. The stocking tab is where you're going to receive invoices. You could even manually add an invoice, and you can do any kind of returns. And either of these functions will increment the inventory into your system. This inventory tab is where you might go to assign items to bins, reprint any labels, do any cycle counts, periodic expirations and wasting. And if you have a CPM supported packager, you would also do any of that pre-packing from this function. The verification tab is where transactions that you determine require a second check would land. So you might not be checking your cabinet fills today or those restocks, but maybe your first doses and cart fills, you still want someone to lay eyes on those. And then the archive function is where reprinted reports can be sent and also reprinted picking labels. Lastly, the settings tab. This is something probably just your system administrator would have access to, but various system settings and configurations can be done there. So hopefully everybody's tracking with me so far. I'm going to, again, just dig a little bit deeper into what those daily workflow processes look like. So for the buyers in the group, this is going to be a lot of what they're doing is the receiving function. So as I mentioned before, CPM can receive those invoices electronically from Cardinal. This example is showing Morrison and Dixon, but I think you get the idea. If you had multiple Cardinal invoices that you had received through the interface, they would all be listed here with the invoice and PO number and the dates associated with that. If you needed to manually add an invoice in from time to time, say for a drop ship item, or maybe you borrowed something from another facility, you have that ability to manually add the item. And there's a little one here that shows you've got this one invoice to receive. And if you simply tap on that or select that invoice, it would include all of the items that were shipped in that invoice, and you would start checking those items in and building your stocking queue. So as you unpack those totes and inspect the items that are received, you would then either scan the item, or you could look up the item by typing in the name here to search for it on the invoice, or you can scroll up and down through the various pages. You know, you're obviously, especially at Vidant, Maine, having large orders, so it's really not ideal to scroll up and down. I recommend the scanning feature. It's certainly nice there because it becomes kind of a hard stop. If something's not in your system and you don't recognize that barcode right then and there, it's an opportunity to validate that that barcode's been set up in OmniCenter, and it also has been set up in Epic. So again, you don't get to the item at the bedside and all of a sudden it won't scan there. So as you're, again, receiving each of these items, you can verify the quantity that you received. CPM is going to be expecting that quantity that you ordered, but if for some reason you didn't receive that same quantity, you can simply move the arrows up or down, or simply type in the quantity that you received. The stock location is going to be displayed on the screen. So if you think about my folks from the storeroom there, where you've got multiple carousels, you would be able to determine which carousel or which refrigerator, which inventory location that item is going to eventually go toward, so that then you could determine which cart to sort of set that on. And if you're in a smaller facility, you maybe are just going to stock all these items now and print out a stock sheet. So once you've got everything received from that invoice, you kind of have the option of doing what we call a two-step or a one-step receiving. So if you're not going to be the one physically putting those items on the shelf, you would simply hit save, and then everything that you just built in that stock list is going to transfer over into the stock queue. But again, if it's a smaller facility and you're a one-man show and you're receiving the drug and literally turning around and putting it away on the shelf, you can simply hit stock now from here. And so moving on to that stocking process, we, again, have a lot of different options based on the size of your facility and what your desired workflow looks like. We can certainly emulate the workflow that you have today, but we also have a lot of options where you can look to automate that and further just advance that so that you're maximizing your efficiency there. But I did just want to discuss kind of some of those different options. So in what we call the guided stocking process, that means the computer screen is guiding you where to go and what to do. The software will guide you literally what to do. So you're following along on the screen and seeing that, yes, this Altaplace needs to go to this item on the shelf. If you needed to adjust the quantity on hand, you could do that. If you needed to adjust the earliest to expire item, you could do that. And you simply hit next to go on to each subsequent item. If you're using CPM in conjunction with carousels, when you go to your stocking list, you're also going to have the carousel spin with each item. So as you see on the screen, the Altaplace and the inventory location, the carousel is also going to spin to that location. And then there's also what's called the tick bar, the transaction information center. It's going to show you that picking information or that stocking information, in this case, right along that information center. Okay. So we also try to use safety stock as much as possible, and that's, again, just another Omnicell term for utilizing the barcode in the process. So you can enable that in the stocking process as well, so that when you're going to put an item back on the shelf, you're required to scan the medication barcode and then scan the bin location barcode and ensure you have a match there. The picking process works much the same, just in kind of the opposite order. Queued processes, like I mentioned before, or automated stocks, are going to flow into this picking queue. So first doses, cart fills. My screenshot here does not show any cabinet restocks, but if you had those, they would land here. Also, any critical loads for your cabinets or any stock outs for your cabinets would show here. You have the option of picking all items, and in that case, if you pick all, the software is going to flow in order of priority that you establish. So the stat amiodarone would get picked first. We're simply just going to pick this one cart fill so that I can just walk you through an example here of what that looks like. If there is anything that needs to be addressed, you're going to get sort of this alert warning sign. And in this case, it's telling you that you don't have enough quantity on hand to pick this one item. So the user could simply tap on that Agrinox, and maybe the count on your shelf is wrong. If you have that privilege, you could adjust the quantity on hand right there. If it's something that's telling you, maybe you need to pick 10 and you do have 5, you could do a partial pick even from that point on the screen. When you're ready and you've addressed any warnings, you simply hit Pick Now. Again, I realize this is displaying a cart fill, but you might be processing a cabinet fill. And in that case, again, you're going to see all of those items that are necessary for that cabinet restock. So again, with safety stock or using the barcode, you might see some other little warning signs here telling you that when you're picking this drug, you need to scan the barcode on that transaction or picking label, and you need to scan the barcode on the actual drug from the shelf or from the carousel, and those two need to match. Here it's telling you that your earliest to expire date has already since passed, so you probably need to adjust that expiration date. And you would continue this process for each of those items in your pick. We do have the ability that if you're in the middle of sort of that pick all, or you're doing a large cabinet restock and something of more important priority comes into the queue, say a stat or a first dose, you're visually alerted to that, and you have the option of simply tapping on this priority pick, and it's going to pause or interrupt that batch pick that you were in the middle of. When you're done with the priority, it's going to take you right back into this batch pick. But you can also visually see up here, hey, I'm almost done with this cart fill, and maybe you don't want to go to that priority pick right now because you'll be done in just a second. You've got that option. So that's how CPM and the software works in sort of that guided picking mode. But I also wanted to just kind of touch on and give you a visual of how this could work, again, in a smaller, maybe a software only solution where you're just happy using that pick list and that paper report, and we can accommodate that. So again, when you hit Pick Now, the paper report would print, and all of those items are immediately decremented from your inventory. And then you would simply take your paper pick list over to the inventory locations and pick all of the items on the list. And even if you're using a non-guided picking process, you can still enable what we call safety stock. So you can still require the user to scan the barcode when they're picking those items. Just to touch on the manual picking real quick, we do have the ability to allow you to go in and pick something. Again, maybe somebody calls down and says, our cabinet is out of XYZ drug, and you're showing that they still have drug, but they're saying they're out. You can come in here and manually pick a medication for a cabinet or for an area. Maybe the ER calls and they've got a trauma and you just need to pick something right now. You have that ability to do that. So again, you would simply pick on either your patient or your cabinet or your area, and then type in the name of the drug that you're looking for and have the ability to pick that manually. CPM is going to support having that same item stocked in multiple locations and maybe even in different dosage forms. So you maybe have a bulk location where maybe your overstock resides, and then you've got sort of your working stock. It might be something that's on back order or it's hard to come by, so you've ordered up everything you can get your hands on. You want to manage that overstock area and have those inventory counts still recorded in the software, but you also want to have your working stock that you're using on a day-by-day basis, maybe in another location. So my point is that the CPM software will allow you the ability to set up those multiple stock locations and have them still managed. As I mentioned, you can set up the verification tab, so you can decide which order types or which pick types require a verification. And so only those users that are set up for verification would even see this tab when they log into CPM. But what we find in a lot of cases, particularly in North Carolina, you're maybe not checking any of those cabinet restocks as they get pulled from the pharmacy, because your techs are going to scan them when they're restocking them into your automated dispensing cabinet. And that's totally normal, perfectly fine, but maybe you want to check anything that is a patient-specific dose, or anything that might get picked as a manual pick. You want to force those to go to this verification queue. So you certainly have that, that set up, and CPM is going to support that. Similar to the picking process, the verification process can be set up to enable safety stock or force you to scan the barcode on that transaction label and scan the barcode on the item itself. And those two need to match. If for some reason they don't match, the pharmacist or the credentialed tech that's doing the verifying would simply reject that item. And then you've got that report even available to you to indicate, you know, was it the wrong drug or the wrong patient, or what that reason was for why they rejected the order. And lastly, I just want to touch on the ordering process. Again, I realize my screenshot here is showing McKesson's ordering portal, but imagine that this was the Cardinal platform here. CPM, through that communication with OmniCenter, is going to look at the established reorder levels that you set up and go ahead and prepare that order for your buyer or your purchasing agent within the Cardinal platform. And then you certainly have the opportunity to adjust the quantities or say, you know what, I'd rather pick another item, or perhaps in here you can see you can't even get your hands on that particular manufacturer's item, so you need to make a change. All of that still can be done through your ordering portal, just like you do today. But again, the real takeaway is this is streamlining that want book process and keeping lists of here's what we need to order, and using, you know, sort of that tribal knowledge of, oh, I know we need to keep 200 of these on the shelf. It's really looking at established utilization and taking those set reorder points into account. Okay, moving on, I just wanted to touch on the remote ordering function as well. So included with the CPM license package is a function we call remote ordering. And I think of it as kind of an online shopping list, kind of like Amazon. And you might use this for any clinics or remote areas, or even if a satellite is, you know, calling or faxing or emailing you with orders that they would routinely want from your pharmacy, you can set this up through a web-based URL that basically is just going to give them access to those, you know, 10 or 20 or 50 line items that they would typically order from you, but it's done electronically. That user would simply come into the URL or the website to their specific order sheet that you've created for them and tell you how many of each item they want, and then click on order, and they, you know, submit their order online. So it becomes a bit like, you know, online shopping through Amazon, if you will. That order is going to drop into your CPM picking queue. So instead of a cart fill or a cabinet fill, it's going to come across as, I don't know, I'll make something up, OR satellite order. So you can create those different shopping lists for any of those offsite locations. Okay, so I've been doing a whole lot of talking about the software there. Again, I just want to pause and make sure everybody's tracking with me before we move on to some of the hardware discussion. We good?
We're here.
Okay, I'm going to keep going, and we will have some time here at the end, so I'll be happy to address questions. So CPM comes with what we call this all-in-one, or AIO, workstation. And that basically means, you know, it's this computer screen that's a touch screen monitor. You get a keyboard and a mouse, the wireless scanner, a label printer, a biometric reader, and a power supply. So that's kind of the all-in-one workstation. Obviously, a minimum of one of those is required at each facility so that you're interacting with the software. Typically, what we find is, depending on the size of the hospital pharmacy and the workflow layout, it may require anywhere from 3 to 5 to 6. I mean, a facility like your main campus might easily have 7, 8, or 9 if we've got satellite pharmacies that we're dealing with. And that's the piece that Kelly alluded to that we want to follow up with, each of you, to try to determine what that right number is. We can also have this software running various hardware, so carousels being one of those. So we certainly sell our own carousels, but we also have a communication kit that can essentially put all of those components on the existing Sencor white carousels that you have, so that the software, CPM, can then spin those carousels. I do think we'd be looking at replacing the really old ConnectRx med carousel that's in the central pharmacy at Vidant Medical Center. And as those of you with carousels are probably already familiar, they come with different totes. We can utilize totes that you already have. Again, we just need to verify and validate that those sizes make sense with the CPM software. I think I've kind of reiterated already that CPM can manage remote areas. It can manage refrigerators. Basically, the way the software works is everything is set up with a location code. So there's going to be an area code, a level code or shelf code, and then a bin number, so that they essentially all have a unique address in the system. And even beyond the carousels themselves, CPM can support a tabletop packager that produces unit dose blister cards, one of the high-speed packagers, or even a high-speed fully automated robot that can dispense cabinet fills, cart fills, you name it. So to just kind of sum up here, everything that we've talked about, the concept that we're talking about today is having inventory-wide perpetual inventory, or excuse me, enterprise-wide perpetual inventory management software that accomplishes as close to 100% of inventory items being managed by the software. Having a single platform across your entire enterprise, so that your daily workflows can be automated, provide support for all of those open shelf areas, remote locations, satellite locations, IV premix locations, any carousels that you have today. Heck, there might even be areas where you want to look at carousels to consolidate inventory into a small footprint if you're having, you know, your pharmacy gobbled up by renovations for, who knows, USP 800 regulations. We want to leverage the barcode for accuracy and having, again, all of this reside on a single platform. Those are kind of, again, all the goals we're hoping to accomplish. So I'm going to just stop talking here and end on the next step slide. And hopefully I've done okay on time, and we've still got about 15 minutes reserved for questions that you all may have.
Anybody on the phone? Go
Terry,
ahead.
this is Tammy. I would assume you would need one of those all-in-one workstations for every location where you would be receiving stock. If that was a satellite or another location like in the main pharmacy, you would need one of those all-in-one workstations there.
Yes. Yep.
And on the verification process, is that something that you would sort of like an all or none, or could you, like what we do here is we set up a sampling, so we do a certain percentage and we'll go and just do like a random audit. So can you set up a verification just for those random audits that are performed?
You know, that's a great question, Tammy. I don't honestly know the answer to it, so I don't want to tell you wrong. But you're not alone in needing to do that. I mean, we've got customers all over the country that, yes, have that sort of QA and a reduced check that they're performing. So I feel confident that we can do that, but I am just going to double check for you and make sure that I know what kind of those parameters or limitations are for how you set that up. So I'll take that as a follow-up.
Okay, thanks.
So Terry, I know when you were on site at VMC, one of the challenges that we have is that we've got a carousel in one of our locations. It's in our cancer center, and they are not able to stock the same product in that carousel and in the cancer center, actual cancer center pharmacy. I just want to make sure that do you remember that situation that we had?
Yep.
I just want to make sure that we talk through that there is a solution to that within this software.
Yeah, there is. And without, going into great lengths, what I would recommend is that the third floor storeroom, if I remember where that was, that carousel would have its own CPM sort of setup there. So it's going to have its own workstation and be its own CPM. And then the cancer center pharmacy would have what we call satellite pharmacy manager. Again, it's just another acronym, SPM, that we use. The only real difference is that it's like a child site of that storeroom pharmacy location, so that you can have duplicate inventory. And the only real difference is the satellite, that SPM software, it's licensed limitation that it cannot power hardware. So SPM can't spin a carousel, it can't run a packager. And the only other real limitation, if you will, is that it cannot have that direct interface with the wholesaler. It's usually, though, that satellite is getting their inventory and being replenished from sort of a parent site. So that's how I would recommend we set up the cancer center pharmacy and that third floor storeroom carousel.
Okay, so let's put that in the let's talk about category, because I'm pretty sure that I know that we actually do our chemotherapy ordering out of that location that you're suggesting to be an SPM. So
okay.
They do have direct link into the wholesaler from there. So we just have to talk through that. And then I guess the other thing, just so you know, to have some clarity around our ability to have Vidant Medical Center really visualization of inventory, in addition to Vidant Health, you know, system-wide visualization of inventory. But looking at VMC, in order for us to get, you know, really good inventory management of what sits on the shelves in all of our areas, would we have to set up each of our satellite pharmacies as an SPM?
Potentially. You know, yeah, I think, again, we can talk through that in a little bit more in depth, kind of as the follow-up for VMC. You know, again, it just sort of ties into what are you really hoping to accomplish. So if the overall goal is that 100% inventory management, then probably each of those satellites would need to be set up with SPM.
Okay. So I know our buyers are on the phone, and I know we've got some folks from across the system. I just want to make sure that, you know, that if you all have questions, certainly we'll have an opportunity to dive into this further, and we can have follow-up calls, but just want to make sure you all have an opportunity to ask questions about things that you've seen and maybe aren't quite clear.
A quiet group today.
Terry, you've done a perfect job explaining it.
I doubt that, Andy, but I appreciate the compliment. It's probably that, you know, folks are just sort of numb to new information and trying to process it all, or it's lunchtime and I'm standing in the way of it.
Well, I guess if there are no other questions, the next steps from here would be then for you all to reach out to each individual site. And I know that it's like maybe we had 3 sites total maybe on here, but you would reach out to them individually and just schedule a time to meet with them to just talk through this quickly about what their needs would be for inventory management.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of my hope as well. Sorry, Kelly.
No, go ahead.
I was going to try to preempt those conversations with sort of a, here's my best guess based on the little bit that I know and the information that Mike has gathered thus far. But, you know, I don't want to make assumptions. So it really would be more a discussion of, you know, here's what we do today and here's how this would look in the future.
All right, well, if you need my help with any of that, let me know. Otherwise, we appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to the next steps.
And Terry, Kelly, would y'all send out this slide deck and recording?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I will send it out to the list of everyone that was invited, because we do want those sites to have a minute to review this before we have our discussion. So I'll send out a reminder as well. All right. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate your time today. And if you have any questions between now and when we reach out to you, please don't hesitate to let us know. Have a great afternoon. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.